Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Wednesday at about 10:41. So yeah, getting closer and closer to Halloween season. It's funny lately. I've been this week. I've been diving back into watching Friday 13th, the franchise. My I've done multiple shows on that show or on those movies. Man, I always as many times that I've seen the Friday 13th movies, which realistically I can't even count how many times I've probably seen them. I never get sick of them, and I just love it. It always I don't know. It's my ultimate, it's my ultimate franchise. I love that franchise so much, and it's just it's one of those things I get totally lost in when I watch them, and it's it's pure escapism. There's a lot of there's a lot of franchises out there, especially this day and age, but. And I have some films, some franchises that I really love, some I don't, but some are pretty mixed. But I've always said that Friday 13th franchise is just my favorite. So I've been watching them again, and I've even thought, I was even thinking last night of doing another show on the Friday 13th franchise. But I probably have at least 3 or 4 shows already on this channel about the franchise. So, but hey, why not? I might do it again. Sometimes I think there was a time when I was doing reviews on movies, and I would do see a movie, movie that I bought, and then I'd watch it, whether it was a new movie or like a new discovery or something that I grew up watching, and I finally get it on Blu-ray, and I'll do a show on that, and I find myself. There were times where I find myself wanting to do another show on on that same movie, and I was like, well, maybe that's too much to do too many shows on one particular movie or one particular franchise. And so a lot of times I'm pretty conscious of not doing that and trying not to repeat myself doing, say, for instance, Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, like doing too many shows on that because maybe it's just kind of ridiculous. But I love movies, and I'm, film fanatic, so I think movies, I think that's worth pursuing. So I'll probably do some revisiting, shows of where I'm going to be even revisiting another movie, or that same movie again, and, re-examining, because I think it's like, kind of like fine wine. I think things have a little bit of a different meaning to you as you get older, or in your maybe in that particular stage that you're in your life, something has a different resonance to it. You might get something out of it differently. And with the Friday 13th franchise, it's just fun, and it's obviously very nostalgic because I grew up watching those movies. So I don't know. I might do another show on the Friday 13th series. Why not? Why the hell not? But lately, I've been doing shows on quite a few new movies that I have never seen, and were first-time purchases. And I've been discovering all kinds of movies. And again, I try to mix it up. I try to do most of the stuff here on this channel, or probably 90% are all older films, but I try to stay current. I try to stay, I try to keep my finger on the pulse as far as new things that are coming out. I just did a show. I just uploaded. It's set as a premiere. I just did a show on the newer. It just came out this year. It just came out on DVD and Blu-ray. The new Nicolas Cage movie, Longlegs. So check that out. I was really surprised with that movie. And then I also, try to mix things up. Most of these shows on this channel are horror-based or science fiction, mostly horror-based. But I love, lots of different styles of films. in different genres, so I try to mix things up. So I even did a show recently on the new Kevin Costner movie, Horizon, which is kind of painful to get to sit through. But I did a show on that. I love westerns, so again, I try to mix things up. But that being said, today's show is on a movie that, I, in all honesty, I have to say I was just blown away by. I had never seen it before. I never heard of it before. I have really, been blown away by a lot of these films that I've been buying, especially as of late. Where I just took a chance as a consumer, and I'm like, you know what, throw a little caution to the wind, and see what happens. Because knock on wood, I've had a lot of good luck with buying a ton of films that I've never seen before. Maybe I've heard a thing or two about them, or a couple of YouTube guys that I really like have talked about that particular movie or those movies, and so I go, by that, and then there's times of where it's totally cold. Um, but I've been psyched because I've lucked out. I probably only have like one or two movies that I bought that I was not really happy with or not really into, or and but out of all of the movies I buy, especially more recently that way, I've struck gold each time. So today's show is definitely an example of striking gold, and that is Invasion of the Blood Farmers. Holy shit, this movie is just incredible. Again, one of the reasons and one of the ways that helps me kind of navigate through all of these films that are coming out on all of these boutique labels is that I have obviously bought a lot of movies, but I've really become familiar and somewhat knowledgeable of all of the boutique labels that are out there now, and recognizing a title, say for Vinegar Syndrome or Arrow or Mondo Macabra or Blue Underground, Synapse, and then this is Severin. This is a Severin release, and again, I have a ton of Severin movies. When I think of it, I probably have most of the movies that I own, especially when it comes to the low budget exploitation genre, are definitely all Severin movies at this point. And the last 3 or 4 times that I went and bought a bunch of movies, they were definitely all Severin movies, and I have been super excited and just been really gleefully surprised. I watched this movie twice in one sitting. This movie is completely bonkers, completely crazy. It's literally what the title says in the film. It came out in 1972. It was directed by Ed Adlum and written by Adlum and Ed Kellner. It's And the other thing that's amazing to me about this movie is it's super schlocky, and it's super terrible. Just super raw and dirty and nasty. So incredibly low budget. It kind of harkens back to me. It brought me back to some of the classic films by like Herschel Gordon Lewis, like Blood Feast, where it's just like, it almost feels like it was shot for $50 and change. But it just, there's something about it that, again, it's that thing, that fine line of where, something is so terrible that it's good, and I love that. There's a really great special features thing on here where there's an interview with Ed Adlum, the director, and also the producer of the film. And he worked on a bunch of different movies in the 70s and also in the 60s. Ed Adlum was a producer. He also directed a few movies, but he directed some just some wild and trashy movies. Another movie of his that I own is Shriek of the Mutilated from 1974, and that movie is just I love that. I love that fucking movie. Blonde on a Blonde on a Blum Trip, which is a film I've never seen of his, and he was also involved with that movie. There's a really great, again, this film came out in '72. A lot of great special features. There's a really great interview with Ed Adlam on this film, on this disc, where he talks about this crazy chance meeting that he had, where he ended up meeting Steven Spielberg. And he was involved with numerous kinds of businesses and whatnot, and he ended up having this interaction where he met one of the clients for one of the companies he worked for was actually Steven Spielberg. And he had this conversation with Steven Spielberg, and I guess it was right around the time that Jaws had come out. So it was, Jaws was a massive commercial success, and it's a masterpiece. I don't know if I've done a show on Jaws. I should. I need to buy that on Blu-ray too. But anyway, he was talking to him a little bit of small talk, and he it came up to where he said, "Yo, yeah, Ed was saying I've done some a few movies also." And then Steven Spielberg, asked him what movies they were, and he told him the films that he, worked on, and Invasion of the, Blood Farmers, and Shriek of the Mutilated, and Steven Spielberg's reaction was like, "Oh," and he literally got up in the conversation. I think they were sitting down. He got up, and he was like, "Oh," and he walked out of the room and never talked to him again. And he basically walked out on him after he told him what movies he actually directed. And pretty hilarious, pretty unbelievable. And it's an interesting thing because I always find that there is like a, kind of this fine line, or this push and pull thing between, like, say, when you look at Steven Spielberg's career, and again, I'm a huge fan of a lot of his films. Close Encounters, one of my favorite movies of all time, of course, Jaws, a lot of great films. But he's very much a, if you look at it from a technical standpoint, very much like, 100%, he has all of the technical ability that one could have to direct a film. And has, a huge skill set. And obviously is part of the Hollywood kind of system. And then you have someone like Ed Adlam, or, tons of other exploitation producers or directors. Well, like I brought up Herschel Gordon Lewis. And they are like everything. There's they are so, I guess you could say, so anti that. Like, they don't have any of those skill sets, and they don't they throw out any of those established rules in every possible way. It's interesting to me. And I remember last year I was on a podcast, being interviewed, and the guy, Matt, who was the interviewer, was asking me, basically why, you seems like you love all kinds of movies, but why do you? What is it about these exploitation movies and these really trashy, garbage kinds of movies what is it that makes you excited? Why is it that style that you find interesting? What is it that gets your gourd? And I said, to me, I remember saying in an interview that, and I think the interview is still available. I basically said that for me, at the end of the day, it's like putting on a punk rock record. It's just raw. It's raw and nasty and direct, and it's kind of all passion, and it's not clean. It's messy, and it's just coming at you like a bullet. And that's how I described it. And I said to Matt during the interview, like, that was kind of my response as to why I love, exploitation movies. And again, I love Hollywood movies too. I love big budget Hollywood films, but I gravitate towards those things. And I said that's why. That's why I gravitate towards those things, because I love that. It's just that rawness and that fun aspect. I often say I think too many Hollywood films, too many times. I think and it's in general. In general, I think anywhere in the arts, I think artists, you could take your work, of course, incredibly seriously and be really dedicated to, like, your craft. But I think as artists and musicians, and I include myself in that category, we tend to take ourselves way too seriously, and that we get wrapped up in that, and we can't, like, we can be really serious, wear a hat, and be very serious and crafting what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to say or whatever. But also, to be able to have that ability to kind of detach yourself from it, and kind of laugh at it, and just, like, you know poke at it a little bit, I think is good. And I think in the world of exploitation, you have that. That's a big part of it. Is that it's like, obviously you have films that are more serious than others, and they deal with more serious themes. But for the most part, it's there's a lot of tongue in cheek. There's a lot of humor, and they're not. You're not getting hit over the head with, like, serious, like a really, like, concrete, heavy-handed kind of aesthetic. And it can be, it's escapism, and it's fun. And so that's kind of how I feel about those things. And so it's interesting. In this movie, again, I watched this movie, I think it was last week, and it's completely and utterly ridiculous. The other thing that's amazing about this film is that it's rated PG. And I have talked about this before, but I'm a fan of when artists, like, have to create something, but there are, say, extreme limitations, like where you only have this narrow kind of palette, and you go into the project with all of these limitations. And so what can you do with that? And I'm always fascinated by that. Two of my favorite films, two of my favorite kind of horror exploitation movies, and my favorite of all time, which I've done multiple shows on, and I'll probably do more, is The Tourist Trap. That's my all-time favorite exploitation slasher movie. And then also another movie that I just love to death, which is Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. I've done shows on that too, and I'll probably do future shows. But the amazing thing is, those movies are both rated PG. And I think those movies have some of the most kind of sinister imagery and aesthetics. And I think those movies they just have such creepy, the atmosphere is just so incredibly creepy. Super twisty. I think, and again, they're PG rated. Dark Knight of the Scarecrow was actually a TV movie, and there's not really much gore. Again, I love gory slasher movies to death, but again, if I feel like I'm getting transported into this world, and almost to where you can taste it, it's the atmosphere, then I'm usually going to be a fan of the movie. It doesn't take a lot in that regard for me to enjoy a film. And so that's what I'm fascinated by. It was like, those movies are essentially well, they are PG rated films, and there's not copious amounts of gore. It just has this atmosphere and this, and I think Tourist Trap, for instance, is one of the most demented movies ever made. Even though it's, like, completely asinine and ridiculous, there are things about that film that I think are just blood chilling. And that movie was a movie I was raised on. I used to see it all the time as a kid. It used to be on cable and it was in syndication, you know, and so and Invasion of Blood Farmers is part of that whole thing. Like this, I when I watched the special features, that's when I found out that this movie was actually rated PG, and I was just like, "What?" Totally floored, because this movie is, it's pretty gory, and it's you know, again, it's twofold. Like on one hand, it's totally like absurd and cheesy and ridiculous, and then there's other moments of the film of this movie where it's like generally bonkers crazy and super strange and you know kind of disturbing and kind of fucked up, and it has this weird balance, and it is pretty gory, like especially the first half. There's quite a bit of you know these kind of gory scenes, especially the opening, but you realize in the film like you can see that there's like a lot of weird cuts and edits, so you don't see all of the gore, but I still was into this movie. And when I saw that this movie was actually PG, I was just like, wow, like that's wild. Like, I love that. I love that idea of like that challenge as a filmmaker where they, you know, they're trying to get a certain kind of rating. So what can they do without showing very much, you know? I think that's awesome. And I think the key component of that is kind of the world building facet, you know, like where you're building this tangible universe or this world that you can like get into, and it has this rich atmosphere, and you check out of the mundane and you're in that space, you're in that zone. And I just think that, you know, it's ridiculous as this movie is, Invasion of the Blood Farmers. It does that, you know, it's in that territory 100%. And this movie is just great. It's total trash. Yeah, it's great. It's one of the better Seven releases I have gotten pretty recently, and I've bought a shit ton of Severin. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. The transfer of this movie is pretty incredible. It looks amazing and kind of spectacular. I can imagine what it must have been like to have gotten a chance to see this in the cinema, you know, back in the grindhouse times of the 70s and 80s. Like, I remember it was sometime last year or something, I was like having a discussion with somebody or a friend or a coworker or something, and somebody brought up the idea of like, oh, what if you had access to like a time machine? You know, what would be the first place you would visit? And people said, you know, there were, you know, it was a little group of us or something, and somebody, you know, some people were saying about, well, I'd love to be like transported to like um you know, maybe ancient Egypt, or some, you know, to go to be transported to like some kind of, you know, historical period. And my wish, or what I said was, if I had a time machine, I would want to travel back to 42nd Street in the late 70s, early 80s, so I could experience that incredibly dangerous and sleazy, you know, kind of era of filmmaking, and then also getting a chance to see these films in that context. And I remember a couple of people thought I was kind of crazy, but what else is new? So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.